Hey there, STEM enthusiasts. I'm Courtney, and welcome to the STEM Spark, the podcast where we ignite curiosity, creativity, and confidence in every learner through science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Today, we're diving into the nuts and bolts, the behind-the-scenes stuff that makes your STEM or STEAM lessons really work. I'm talking about things like how we set up our materials, how we guide expectations, get student buy-in, and keep things running smoothly when the gears, literal or metaphorically, start to turn. So whether you're prepping your first STEM unit or looking to level up your routine, this one is for you. Let's get to it. Okay, so we're going to first start with materials. Before we get students brainstorming and building, we need to start with the basics, materials. Now, I know we don't all have a closet full of robotics kits or an endless supply of pipe cleaners, but great STEM doesn't have to be fancy. Look around your classroom or even your recycling bin. Cardboard, tape, paper clips, string, plastic cups, those things are gold. Pro tip: keep a STEM bin or a cart where students can shop for materials. This helps with independence, organization, and makes the activity feel a little more special. What I do is I set up my front table, which is called affectionately my teacher table, and it is where I do demonstrations from. It's where I prep, and so I will set up basically the store for them. And all the materials that they are allowed to use are on that table, and then they can come get what they need. Now, there are different rules for different types of materials. If it's the scrap bin, it's like you don't have to ask, you just have to come get it. And so that's kind of just a free-for-all. I do have some like crafty supplies that are also kind of a free-for-all. But the materials that they're mainly using, pipe cleaners, googly eyes, cardboard, different materials like that, they have to have a plan. They have to know how much they want, how many they want, what color, etc. Because they know that they're not just going to take just whatever they think they might want. They have to have that plan and a lot of times we do group work, and so they have to have had discussed it with their group as well. And so keeping those materials organized, helping them stay on point with the plan. Even if the plan changes, that's okay. We talk about that a lot, how our plan is very likely to change. So that's great. I love that your plan has shifted because you've tested and figured something out that you didn't know before. But you also need to think about, okay, what materials do I really need? We are all about conserving materials and not wasting them. Okay, so the next thing I would like to share with you about my classroom is setup. This is key. If students walk into chaos, you've already lost their focus. They are already thinking about other things or not listening, so I always recommend having things prepped, having things ready before the kids come in. It is not always possible, and so there is grace, there is the freedom to kind of go on the fly, but with STEM, I have found that it is better for me and my sanity, and ultimately better for my students if I can make sure that things are prepped and ready to go in a neat and organized way before they even walk into the room. I love bins. I am a bin freak, and so I have tons of bins. They're all labeled. They all have different materials in them, and so if I look at a student and say, hey, go get the measuring spoons, or hey, we need the glue guns, or somebody grab the pipe cleaner box. It's already labeled. They know exactly where to go, and they can help get things. It also helps me if I need a specific thing to have it all organized and labeled. I also use clear bins so that you can kind of see in them. Even though they're labeled, it is nice to be able to put eyes on. And if a student needs like a specialty kind of thing, so like permanent markers, I do not leave out. The kids have to ask. And so I have permanent markers in a little bin, and it is labeled, and so I can quickly say, oh, it's the second bin on the top shelf or whatever, and they are able to kind of get that for them. So that is kind of the setup. I think another thing, it kind of goes with setup, it also kind of goes into the next topic we're going to talk about, which is expectations. And so maybe this will be my like merger between the two, but giving clear instructions. Make sure that students have a clear path forward. Like, what is the ask? What is the question? What are the materials? Even we talk about, okay, we know our question, we know our materials, what do we do next? And then we start talking about, I am going to talk about this later, but that goes into the engineering design process and starting to plan. And they know that we're not going to start building without a plan. And so we talk about the importance of the plan, but also that the plan can be flexible. If you're building and your plan isn't working, you have the freedom to change it on the fly. And so sometimes I will require them, if they're drawing out their plan or writing it down, to make that change on their documentation sheet. Sometimes I don't. So it really just depends on the project and what your outcomes goals are. So that kind of leads us into expectations. Set your expectations and stick to them. It is so hard. Guys, I get it. I have been in the classroom for over 13 years, and it is hard to follow through sometimes. I 100% understand. But I will tell you, especially if you have the same kids year after year, I'm in a specialist position, and so I see the same kids as they grow through the grades. And it is so helpful because they remember from last year that if I tell you you're going to have to take a break, I will make you take a break. And so set those expectations. STEM is exciting, and with excitement comes energy. And sometimes that energy goes awry. And so I always take a few minutes to go over those expectations before we jump in. At the beginning of the year, I am setting those expectations over and over and over again and reminding them in a kind and gentle way, hey guys, the volume's too loud. We do want to have fun, and I love that you're engaged, but we need to be mindful of other classes. And so we even talk about, okay, well, why is it important for us to not get so crazy? So things like that, talking about how we treat materials, what materials we can use, how we get materials. Are these ask for materials, or are these I can get materials? How do we communicate with our group mates? Do we have to have a group? Can we work with a partner? Can we work independently? Like, all of these things are things that we talk about before we even begin. I will tell you that when I start a big project, we have 1 hour long classes, and the first day is setting the project, talking about the question, what are we trying to figure out, learning a little bit of background knowledge, and making a plan. And so materials, expectations, all of that is all over it. And so the first day I introduce a new project, they are not doing anything physically other than creating an idea, drawing out a plan, talking to their group, learning what the project goals are, etc. And so I would encourage you to take the time you need to take for that kind of thing. Write directions on the board. I will frequently write directions. I'll write the step-by-step, or like, this is the list of things I need you to get done by the end of class, or maybe even some reminders, the list of materials, whatever it is, write it on the board, say it out loud, repeat it together. Just make expectations a part of your routine. Students will rise to the expectations that you set. And so when you give it to them, just be mindful of enforcing it. You can't tell them, hey, we're going to have a quiet day today, and then let it get crazy loud, because now they know you're not going to enforce it. So make sure that when you give an expectation, you're willing to follow through with it. One of the things that I do is we have what's called Take a Break. And so it is a space for kids that can't handle the environment or are struggling. And they can go there. They can choose to go there themselves and just take a little break, kind of refocus, get themselves calmed down or what have you, and then come back. Or I can ask them to go take a break. And so basically what that looks like for my space is I give 2 warnings. The third time I have to talk to you, I'm asking you to go take a break. Typically it's about 5 minutes. Some kids need a little longer, just depending on, were they angry, were they upset, what have you. So 5 minutes, I'll just set a little timer and then go chat with them. But the expectation for the break is that they are getting, reining in their emotions, getting control of their actions, removing themselves from the situation. A lot of times will ease the panic or the angst that they're feeling. And so that right there typically will lower any heightened emotions or feelings. So taking a break is a really great strategy that my school uses, and the kids know. They just know. And sometimes, like, I'll look at them about to say something and they'll be like, I'm going to go take a break. I'm like, I think that's a really great idea. So they've gotten used to it. All right. So we've talked about materials. We talked about expectations. Let's talk about student buy-in. So we want students to enjoy what they do. I love it when students learn something and they don't even realize it. It is my most favorite thing. I feel like a teacher spy or like a teacher ninja. So getting student buy-in. So the first thing I will tell you is tying it to something real. So for my older kids, well, honestly, any of the kids, how can we design a shelter to protect? I like to use animals, because what kid doesn't like animals? Protect a dog during a storm, or protect squirrels, or there's a nest of baby birds, so getting them thinking about that, and then the design component, and then thinking about, okay, well, shelter, what do we know about this animal and what kind of shelter do they need? Pulling in that science background knowledge, or maybe even watching a video about the animals and learning even more about them, or what have you. And so connecting it to something real, and then having them join into the discussion of like what we're designing or why we're designing it. And so giving students a voice goes a long way. I love getting their opinions about things. We do class chats quite frequently, and one of the things I really love is getting their feedback on projects. And so at the end of the last year, we took not quite an entire class, probably like 20, 30 minutes. And I was just like, okay, what are the projects you really loved? What would you want to do again? And if you didn't like a project, is there something you would change about it to make it better? And it was just a great time of reflection. And it really helps me to like think about the next year and what projects I want to do, how I want to tweak things to make them even better, and things like that. And so when students feel like their ideas matter and they have a say-so and a choice, it goes a long way. Another thing I like to do in this arena is giving them an option, if I can at all possible, of do you want to work by yourself, with a partner, or with a group? And there's some boundaries on all of those, but for the most part, I want them to have the freedom. Like, we did a board game unit, and many of them had an idea they wanted to do, and they didn't want a partner because they didn't want to have to compromise on their idea. They already knew what they wanted to do. And luckily, I had enough materials to allow that to happen. Sometimes, like if we're working with robots, sorry, there ain't no choice. You gotta work with a set number of people because we only have a set number of robots. So things like that do play into it. But whenever you can give them some of that choice back, it is a really great way to up that buy-in from them. And then survey them for their interests. Like, what are they interested in? My students, they are animal crazy. Anything I can do with animals, and they're in. I don't even have to ask. I know, like, anything I do with animals, they are in. And so survey their interests and just kind of see where their passions kind of lie. It's super fun. All right, so now let's jump in to the engineering design process. So this is where the magic happens. And every year I go over the engineering design process. Students understand the process. It's very similar to like kind of the scientific process. And they kind of walk through the process with me for the first experiment or two. And then they are guiding themselves through the process as we go. And one of the things that I really love about this is it's a cycle. And I kind of make that a point to talk about with my students in the beginning, because it doesn't have this designated endpoint like you do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and you're done, you know? And so it circles around. And so I love that part of it. And I think that students in my room are getting more used to that part of it. I think at first it's hard because we ask a question, we imagine any possible solution, and we talk about in the imagine phase, like, there is no wrong answer. There is no answer too crazy. Like, this is where your ideas are allowed to be way out of the box. And then they enter into the planning stage, and it's like, okay, well, if somebody had this crazy idea and this crazy idea and this can you put them all together? And so then it's like, okay, well, what would work and what wouldn't? And so then they're planning, then they're creating, building, designing, and then they test it, and then they improve it. And so, of course, they have to go again and again and again, and probably more times. I have done that with so many different projects, and it is so fun to encourage them. And it's like, even if you didn't get the thing that you intended to get, were you successful? And a lot of times they're like, yeah, we figured this out, and we figured that out, and we know that this won't work. And so it is super fun to watch them kind of go through that process. And honestly, the beauty of STEM is that failure isn't a dead end. It's just a step forward. And so normalize it, celebrate it, saying things like, wow, that didn't work. What an awesome opportunity to try something new. What other creative ideas did your group have? And so really stretching the boundaries on what is possible and what they could do. All right, so the next thing and a part of this, I mentioned it before, but plan. So even if students, and they will, really want to just dive right in, building the project, making the thing, you can't skip the design and the planning step. This is where students get to really be creative. They get to think through their ideas. They get to sketch and label and make a list, and it requires them to slow down and think through their idea, and then maybe even collaborate. What if we took your wheels and my car, and it would probably make the best thing ever. And so I think it really helps me as a teacher gather information as to how well are they understanding the project, and how well are teams, if they're working in groups, working together to collaborate. And so this is a really good way for me to kind of gather some information on how things are starting. And a lot of times I will have them plan, and we don't ever go back to the plan. It's just the process of getting your thoughts out. And so sometimes I have them fix the plan as they go. And I'm like, hey, if you change your design, make sure you redraw it on your plan or change on your plan or what have you. And so that just kind of varies by project. All right, so now we're going to let the building begin, let them go, be ready for that creativity to explode, but also those emotions get really high when things don't work as they want them to. And so that is when our role as the facilitator really kicks in. Asking those guiding questions. What worked? What didn't work? Why do you think it didn't work? Letting them kind of think through those parts to it. Think about balance. Think about weight. Think about scale. Like asking them to kind of clue into some of those science-y kind of concepts that maybe they're not at the forefront of their thinking. And then encourage them to tweak it, change it. Sometimes they have to completely restart. And I tell them, guys, I would be frustrated too if I had to really just start over. But guess what? Now you get to try something completely new, and you get to try out a different idea. And so reminding them that in STEM, no one gets it perfect the first time, and that's okay. That's honestly the point, because if you're never improving, you're just going to have a mediocre product, right? And so we talk about that improvement process, and how even if they were successful, what could they do if they had the time to do it again? What would they improve and do differently? All right, so now this leads us into talking it out. This class discussion kind of component is huge. I carve out time for discussion all the time, whether it's a partner talk, group check-ins, or a full class debrief at the end. Kids talk about their thinking. They reflect and say, hey, I know this really worked, or I never got this part to work. Or some other kid could say, well, I got it to work. We did it this way. And sharing those kind of aha moments and different things like that. And honestly, this is where some of the best learning happens, because we are a culture and our bodies and brains are wired to really connect and share that kind of information. And so along with this is reflecting. So we reflect, we celebrate what worked, what didn't, what would you do differently. This can be quick, or it could be like a write out. It could be just a survey at the end where I get a handful of responses, and then they tally it on their way out the door, which one they felt like, or it could be a thumbs up, thumbs down to different questions. The key with reflecting is helping students recognize that success doesn't always look the same, and you can be successful and still not have the goal accomplished. And so I think as a teacher, when my kids started realizing that, was when I'm like, yes, they're getting it. Like I think it was a third grader that said, well, it didn't work how we originally designed it to work, but it did do this, and we were really proud of it. And I'm like, yes, let's celebrate that. And so celebrating the journey and the things the accidental learnings and successes that we have, because in STEM, it's all about the process. All right, so we're going to recap real quick. Your STEM success starts way before you start that first paper towel tower, or that spaghetti bridge gets built. It starts with those clean materials ready to go, a thoughtful setup, strong expectations where you're going to enforce them, student buy-in, and a process that encourages iteration, reflection, and growth. And so we talk a lot about perseverance and just pushing through even when it gets hard. All right, teachers, parents, homeschool co-ops, all of you who work with students, you've got this. And if no one's told you lately, what you're doing matters. You are planting seeds of curiosity that can grow into a lifetime of learning. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to follow the show, leave a review if you're loving it, and share it with a fellow educator, parent, or friend. I'll be back next week with more ideas to keep your STEM lessons glowing bright. This is Courtney, and you've been listening to The STEM Spark, where curiosity sparks creativity. Bye.